In this module, I want to describe some general consequences of the new global dynamics that we are all facing today. I will focus specifically on the impact of these driving forces on organizations and management, and then I will close with some discussion of specific suggestions for your personal and organizational responses to this new world. So, let's start with how organizations and managers are coping with and adapting to this new and crazy world. First, let's look at some of the consequences. One of the most important consequences, and one that must be recognized if we are going to deal effectively with these many changes, is that everyone, all of us, are affected. There is no place to hide. We cannot escape these six forces. Even if we don't like them or agree with them, we cannot escape them. We must figure out how to cope with them, maybe even to take advantage of them. A second consequence is that people around the world are developing and expressing constantly increasing expectations. Globalization and globalized technology and communication are allowing everyone to observe what is going on and to see how people in the best parts of the world live. The consequence is that everyone wants the best products, the best services, the best lifestyle and jobs, and they want the best government that are available. And now they can see what is available. These constantly increasing expectations are a direct result of globalization and global communications. Millions of people work abroad in countries other than their countries of citizenship. Sometimes this is temporary. Often it becomes a permanent relocation. But in either case, the experience about how others live and work is transported back to the original country, to friends and relatives, raising expectations for those who are still back home. Billions of people travel abroad every year, either by car, train, ship, or air, even by foot. It is estimated, for example, that today over 1 billion passengers cross national boundaries every year just on airplanes. Granted, many of these are the same people making multiple flights. I'm sure I get counted a number of times. But even if it is half or a third of this number that are traveling to another country by air, this is still a major portion of the world's population. And that is just one form of travel. Millions of people leave their home countries through forced emigration. They're refugees from wars or natural disasters or famine. And millions more emigrate looking for work or to rejoin families who have emigrated earlier. Global communication, primarily but not limited to TV, the internet, and cell phones, is now available everywhere. Even the remotest of villages and tribes now have access to information about what is going on in the rest of the world. Through battery-operated radios and televisions, even cell phones and laptop computers. The globalization of business activity has meant that multinational firms are exporting not only their products and services into the most remote areas of the globe, but they are also exporting their ways of doing business, their management styles, their human resource practices, and even their work technologies. A third general consequence is that it is increasingly difficult to determine a person's, a product's, or a firm's cultural or national identity. As Robert Reich, the former U.S. Secretary of Labor, put it, it's hard to determine who is us and who is them. Our products and services and the labor, capital, and technology that produce them come from all over the world. When I looked at the labels on the clothes I'm wearing this morning, I found, for example, that my shoes were from England, my socks were from Honduras, my suit was made in Seoul, Korea, my boxer shorts were made in Mexico, my shirt was made in China, my tie was made in Thailand, and my watch was made in the Philippines. And of course, who knows where the materials, the technology, and the firms that produce these items were from. Even our neighbors and our coworkers come from everywhere. Indeed, who is us and who is them? Part of the point here is that it is hard to tell who owns what. That is, where's the headquarters for any particular company? Or even what company is indeed the parent company for any given firm? Or what is the country of origin of products or services? Due to cross-border mergers and acquisitions, even firms and products and services with names that seem familiar and seem ours often are not. For example, Firestone is owned by Bridgestone, a Japanese company. Of course, Chrysler is owned by Daimler Chrysler, a German company. Braun, the German small appliance company, is owned by Gillette, of course an American company, which it is now owned by Procter & Gamble. Godiva Chocolate, a Belgian company, is owned by Campbell Soup Company. Volvo is owned by Ford Motor Company. Nissan is now owned by Renault, a French company. There are hundreds of such examples from many countries. So, for instance, if Hondas are designed in the U.S., assembled in the U.S. from parts made in the U.S., and exported back to Japan for sale, is Honda still a Japanese car? You want to buy an American car? Which car would you like? A Mercedes made in Kentucky? Or a Ford made in Mexico? And that is the point and the dilemma. Who is us and who is them? And even if you know the ownership of a firm, it is hard to know where the inputs to its products and services have come from, such as the labor, the technology, and the capital. They could well come from, and probably have, from anywhere and everywhere. Again, for example, Boeing aircraft parts are manufactured around the globe. Hong Kong's Cathay Airlines does its airplane maintenance in China, its computer work in Australia, and its back office work in India. British Petroleum has more shareholders in the US than in the UK, its home country. And trillions of dollars cross national boundaries literally every day as people and institutions invest in each other's markets, their stock markets and their product markets. Production technologies are developed everywhere. Software is written by programmers who do part of the work in one country and then pass it off to programmers in other countries around the world. The Japanese eat rice grown in the US, and shirts are made in Honduras from cotton cloth made in Egypt and India. Indeed, who is us and who is them? One of the results of this is that the best products and services can and does come from anywhere in the world. One can no longer maintain the attitude that only what comes from your own country or locale is the best. Indeed, if you don't perform your work and provide your products and services with world-class quality, price, and timing, someone else will. And that someone could come from almost anywhere else in the world. And they'll be more than happy to provide your customers with products or services that are of better quality, a lower price, and maybe even more quickly than you did. And they'll do it with a smile. This is the new world. All of these forces and consequences put together create a world of constant chaos, a world of what I refer to as a world of permanent whitewater, a world where one is always in the rapids or the whitewater, and where one can never enter calm water, where the stress lessens and you can calm down and rest. Given this world of constant chaos or permanent whitewater, in order to survive and thrive, managers and their organizations must change and adapt. In this presentation, I will describe some of the ways in which organizations and managers are changing to cope with this new world. First, let's take a quick look at how companies are changing. Because of this fast-changing world where all the rules are changing, firms have had to change themselves in order to be quicker and smarter. Maybe the most important aspect of this is that they have realized that they must become learning organizations. They must learn and adapt to the changes quicker than their competitors, or someone else will make the changes, use the new technology, make the necessary innovations, and capture the customers and markets. Becoming a learning organization is indeed the only source of sustainable competitive advantage. The firm must create a culture where creating, storing, sharing, and using what is learned from experience and creativity is the most important thing that anyone and everyone does. To facilitate this, organizations have responded by making themselves flatter, with ever larger supervisory spans of control, approaching in some firms as many as 200 people reporting to a single boss. Middle managers are gone, and employees are empowered to make decisions and respond as they see fit to problems and customer needs. Organizations are becoming smaller, with typical business unit sizes of 50 or fewer people, with the expectation that any larger size is unwieldy and should result in employees looking for new applications for the service that can be spun off in a new business unit. And this occurs at the same time that firms acquire other firms and become larger overall, with ever-increasing numbers of smaller business units. Firms are becoming borderless, with cross-functional teams and inclusion of customers and supply chain members in their decision processes, and being used to break down functional silos and narrow perspectives. Firms are becoming partnered with everyone from customers to suppliers to competitors. And this is being done in order to deliver new and innovative solutions to customers' problems. They're much more temporary, as all work is increasingly done in projects, with the necessary specialists pulled together to get particular tasks completed, and then as new problems arise and require new technologies and new specialists, new projects are formed. They're much faster paced. The constant change and increased competition requires quick response, from creativity to new product rollouts to customer service. They're less tangible, as the important work is all in the heads of employees. That is, it's all found in the firm's human capital. And they're modular. Organizations are modular. As groups come together to accomplish particular projects, then they reorganize into other modules to complete new projects. Increasingly, they're informal networks, as much of the critical work is done by managers and even technicians by networking with specialists from around the world that have the information they need in order to accomplish their own work. In today's new world, with its constant surprises and challenges, no one has all the necessary knowledge or experience to get the job done. The most highly valued and productive employees are those with a wide network of contacts and colleagues and the skill and willingness to access them in order to get their work done. Management, of course, has also had to change in response to this new world. The new tasks of management and leadership are now dealing with surprises and constant chaos, so that they must figure out how to create a vision for an unclear destination, know how to create organizations that are flexible and can take on many forms, including joint ventures and partnerships. They've got to know how to create learning organizations, to manage the creation and use of new technology. They've got to think globally. They've got to manage the removal of boundaries and win the global war for talent in an increasingly diverse labor force. And of course, manage global teams. Indeed, today's leaders must, in essence, know how, personally and organizationally, to manage what's really an uncontrollable change process. That is, they must learn how to thrive on chaos and help their organizations and their people to do the same. At the individual level, there are a number of things we can do to improve our chances for success in this new world. First, I would suggest that the two central skills for success involve constant networking and constant self-development and love of learning. As mentioned above, the fast pace and all-pervasive nature of change means we will often, if not all the time, be confronted with challenges to which we don't know how to respond. The successful individual will have people in his or her personal network that she or he can contact to gain help. And this also mandates our constant efforts to learn and to improve our skills and competencies. Today's environment involves the mind more than the hands. We must move from needing repetitive skills to being comfortable with and knowing how to deal with surprises and exceptions. From depending on memory and facts to being spontaneous and creative. We need to move from risk avoidance to risk taking. From focusing on policies and procedures to building collaboration with people across the globe. Because of globalization, our organizations, our employees, our suppliers, our customers are dispersed around the world, which makes communication of all types more difficult and complex. Clients and co-workers are no longer in the same building, let alone in the next building, the next town, or even state or country, and let alone in the same culture or speak the same language. In order to maintain clear understanding of the needs of customers as well as subordinates, we need to find innovative ways to communicate and receive feedback, and we must learn how to communicate across boundaries of distance, language, and culture. To some extent, technology makes the solutions to communication problems easier. With, for example, computer software that enables computers around the world to speak to each other, this also enables their owners to speak to each other. But it can also lead to misunderstandings, to overuse, and lack of necessary personal interaction. Just consider all the virtual and cross-border teams and the use of email that lend themselves to bad communication, largely because of the lack of personal connection. And lastly, let me suggest that in this globalized world that we live and work in, one final ability is becoming essential. I refer to this ability as having a global mindset. If we're going to have to live and work in such a world, as described by these 6 driving forces, then our personal success will be largely dependent on our ability to develop a global mindset. That is, the ability to work in cultures and with people that are different than us. We can develop an awareness of cultural differences through study, but ultimately we have to live in one or more other cultures, and long enough to experience culture shock and to get over that culture shock. Long enough to get over the depression of not understanding or accepting the differences we experience, and finally learning that the differences are okay, that there are good reasons for them, and that you can respect, even value the differences and work with those who are different. As one way to think about this, let me suggest the following set of specific skills that you could develop on your way to developing a global mindset. First, develop for yourself a vision of learning as much as possible about the world and how it works. Understand that you will need to develop empathy for people who grow up and live in different cultures. Know that you will need to develop the willingness and expertise to interact effectively at an individual level with people from other cultures. Because of our globalized communities, we can gain much of the experience with this right at home. Although ultimately it requires relocating to one or more other cultures to gain the realization that there are many ways to behave in the world. You will need to develop global negotiating skills and a clear understanding of the meaning of ethics and integrity as practiced around the world. of course, while developing and retaining your own core ethical values and personal integrity. And you'll need to gain personal knowledge of the rules for behavior in other cultures, usually referred to as protocol or etiquette, which includes everything from gift giving to the means for greeting, to conversation patterns, to eating techniques. Armed with such knowledge and understanding, that is a global mindset, you will be better able to adapt to this crazy new world and to help yourself and your organization succeed. There's much more we could talk about, but hopefully this gives you a starting point for continuing your own personal learning journey into this new world. Thank you for your attention, and best of luck in learning how to thrive on the chaos of your own personal new world.